Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So today got a nice little interesting project for you where we're going to be creating an animated social media tracker counter. Now I got this idea from one of Brad Travis's videos where he had a counter, but with this case I've also added a web scraping function, so it'll go out to each of these different sites here and scrape our data, and then it will retrieve our subscriber follower accounts and then count up. So if, for example, if I just show you, if you say get data, so we get our spinner up here, it will go out, scrape the data, and then you can see we get our counter, animated counter there. Okay, so it's a simple little project. It's just a nice little introduction into web scraping with Puppeteer, and yeah, it's just a fun little project to do. So I hope you enjoy, and let's get going. Okay guys, so to begin this project, you can see I've got VS Code open. We're just going to start by creating our Node app. So we'll go into the terminal and we'll run npm init-y. That just skips all the starter questions, the -y flag. Then we're going to install our dependencies. So we're going to install Nodemon, Puppeteer, and Express. Just going to skip the installation. So all those are installed now. Okay, so if we go into our package.json, you can see our dependencies there. And now it's going to start our scripts. So when we run npm start, we want Node to do npm run, no, not npm, sorry, node app.js, which is going to create in a second. And then we're also going to have a dev script, okay? So if we type in dev here, and this is going to be Nodemon. Okay, so Nodemon is just a dependency which refreshes the server whenever we make a change. So we don't have to go in and restart it manually ourselves. I've created a file called app.js. This is going to be our entry point for our Express server. First thing we're going to do is require that. So we'll say const express equals require express at the top. Underneath that, we're going to say const path equals require path. I'm not sure if we'll use this, but just in case. And then we're going to say const puppeteer equals require puppeteer. This is going to be used to scrape our data from our various social media websites. Okay, so now we're going to initialize our app saying const app equals express, and then we're going to set our port at 5000 in this case, and then we're going to start off by saying our app.get. So we're going to say app.get, and we're going to want to get to our root directory. We're going to say request and response, and then we just want to send back just a simple hello string. Okay, so then coming underneath this, we're just going to say app.listen on the ports that we set above, and then we're just going to do a simple console log in the terminal just to say that our server is listening on port, and that port 5000 did a template literal there. Okay, so if we just run this now, I'm going to come into my terminal and just do npm run dev. You can see our server's running on port 5000 now in the terminal. Let's just get that open. And you can see we get our hello string there at the top. Okay, so the next thing we want to do here is I'm going to create a folder called public. This is just going to store our static HTML file, index.html, as well as our style.css. So let's just do a boilerplate in the HTML file. Close these down for now. And then coming underneath our port, we're just going to initialize our middleware. Okay, so we're going to say app.use, and here we're going to say express.static, and we're going to set that public folder we created to be our static folder. And then we're also going to say app.use express.json, okay? And this will enable our Express to pass JSON data back to our server to the front end, from our server to the front end. Okay, so now you can see I've edited the index.html, and that's automatically served now that we're using that static public folder to serve our HTML file, okay? When we go to the root directory. So let's just go into our HTML file now, and then I just want to copy this font awesome script down the bottom here. This will let us access the logos, the social media logos. So coming into the body, actually let's just link to the style.css first in the header section. Do the title, I'm going to say social media tracker. Can then come back down into our body section, and here we're going to do a div of a class of counter, and within this div we're going to have our YouTube div, This is going to contain our YouTube information. So the first one I do is go into Font Awesome and get the YouTube icon. So we'll take this first one here. Just going to copy that I class, and then we'll paste that into our YouTube div. Come underneath this, we're going to have a div with a class of YT-count. And this is going to contain our actual number of followers or subscribers. And then underneath this, we're going to have a H4 with a class with just text saying subscribers. Okay, we're going to do the same thing for our Instagram now. So div with a class of Instagram. In here, we're just going to copy the I tag again. We'll just change YouTube to Instagram. And then, before we proceed, we need to add another class of count to our YouTube YT count above here, like so, okay? And then I'm just going to copy this, paste that down. So we're just going to change that YT to Insta count. And then we'll just change that subscribers to followers. And then finally, we'll just copy this and do the same thing for our Twitter as well. So div with a class of Twitter, change that Instagram text to Twitter. And then we'll just change this to TW count as well. Okay, so that's it for our counter container. Coming underneath this, we're just going to create a button with a class of button as well. And here we just say get data. So now if we go into the browser, you can see our logos have started there, and we also have our button. So that's looking good so far. Now I'm going to come into the bottom. We're going to create a script tag. Just going to get our selectors here. So we'll select the button first with querySelector.button. YT count with querySelector YT-count, Insta count with IG count with document.querySelector Insta count. Then we'll do the same thing for our Twitter count as well. That'll be .tw count. And then we'll just finally do our counters as well. So to select all the counters. So when we gave all of these a class of count, so we're going to use querySelector all with .count. Now I'm going to say add an event listener to our button, a click, and it's going to initialize a function called request data. We'll create that now. So function request data. We're just going to say console.log button clicked for now. Check it's working. Refresh that, open the console, click the button. You can see we get our button click there in the console, so that's working. Come underneath this, we're going to say let xhr equals new XML HTTP request. This is how we're going to use this is like kind of an old school way to do AJAX queries, but it's how I like to do it. We're going to say xhr.open, and then we insert the method, which is going to be a post method in this case. And we're going to post to the root path, and we're putting true there, as this is going to be an asynchronous method, okay? Come underneath this, we're going to say xhr.onload. That's going to equal function. So this is what happens when we get the data back from the server. We're going to say if this.status is equals 200, which means the we was able to fetch the data. We're going to say let data equals json.parse this.response text, because our server is going to send the data back in JSON format, so we need to pass that on the front end. And we're going to console log the data for now, won't do anything else. And then if we, what do I do next? If we come underneath, if we get an error, we'll just say else console log something went wrong. And then if we come underneath this, we're just going to say xhr.send. Okay, so this will just send a post request to our server when we press that button. So now if we come back to our server, app.js, we'll just do an app.post. And here we're going to set the root directory. And this has got to be an asynchronous function because we're going to use Puppeteer. But for now, we're just going to say console.log clicked, just to show you that our server is receiving a post request from our front end. So if we press get data, come back to our terminal, we can see we get clicked in the server terminal down there. So that's all working. Okay, so now we're going to start using Puppeteer. So if we open up the Puppeteer website, click on get started, and we have this piece of starter code here. So we'll take that for now. You can see here, if we paste that into our post method. Okay, so we're going to set our Puppeteer to go to google.com for now. Also, I want to go just back to the Puppeteer website. We need to get a piece of code which makes the browser headless false. Okay, so I'll just copy this here. We're going to paste this headless false object into our launch method up here. this will just enable us to see the Chromium browser in action. So if we press get data now, you should see Chromium open. It navigates to google.com, and you can see here we get a screenshot as the starter code takes a screenshot of the website. We don't want that in this case, but it's quite a nifty tool to have. So now if we go back to our browser, I just want to go to my YouTube channel to get my subscriber count, okay? So I'll go to my channel, and the first thing I'll do is just copy the actual address, okay? So I'm going to navigate to this address first using Puppeteer. So I'll replace that Google with my address, YouTube address. And come under here, we're now going to get the subscriber count, okay? So if I just click on this, we should go to my YouTube channel now. And then, so in order to get the subscribers, if we go to inspect, I'm going to select that subscriber element there. I'm just going to copy the JS path, okay, using the dev tools. And then we're going to say const YouTube count. So we're going to create a variable called YouTube count. That's going to equal await. We need to await this method. We're going to say page.valuate. And then in here, we're going to do a function. We're going to say let count equals. We're going to paste that selector in we copied. We're going to say dot inner text. Okay. And then in here, we're going to say return count. So now, if we come out of this, and if we just do await, and we say console.log YouTube count, YT count, if we press this now, you'll see our Chromium opens, and then if we go back to our server, you can see we get our 288 subscribers there. So that scraping's working. Now all we need to do is pass the number from this string and that just gets returned. So in order to do that, we're just going to say return pass int. Then we're going to take that count, and remember it's 2 words, so we need to dot split first. We need to split where there's a space. So I'll just do that in there, and then we need to take the first element of the array that it creates. Okay, so now if we start that again, we should get the number returned now. If we go back to our server, you can see we get the integer now, 288, so that's working great. Now the next thing we want to do is do the same thing but for our Instagram, okay? So let's come underneath this, and then we're going to just copy that go-to method again. Okay, and then now I want to go to my Instagram page. So let's just type that in, Instagram Conor Bailey, and then open that up. And then I just want to get that followers, 283 followers section there, okay? So I've just copied the address in. And now if we go to inspect again, and I'm just going to take that tag there. Let's just make this a... Okay, so I'm just going to copy the JS path again. And here we're going to say, again, as above, we're going to say const, let's come underneath this, say const IG count, and that's going to equal await. We're going to say page.evaluate. It's the same thing as above, and we're going to say let count equal. We're going to paste in that selector we just copied from our dev tools. And then we're just going to say inner text again, dot inner text. And then we're just going to say return pass int count. Okay, we don't need to do any split because it's only the number contained in the actual element. So now you'll see if we add this IG count to our console.log, and if we initialize this again, see now we navigate to YouTube, then we navigate to Instagram, and now you should see that we get our counts logged there in our terminal. Okay, so now let's do the same thing for Twitter. So if we come back to this, I'm going to come underneath our Instagram account. I'm going to copy this go-to method again, and now we just want to go to our Twitter, my Twitter page to get the Twitter follower count. Okay. So you can see we've got this 111 followers here. If I just get that element. Try that again. Copy the JS path. Come back to our server. I'm just going to say const tw count equals page.evaluate, and then we want to just say let count equals. I want to get the actual selector, not the JS path, not the selector. Copy the JS path. What's going on there? And then paste that in there, and then say .inner text as above. Okay, and then again, as above, we're going to say return count, pass int count, like so. Okay, so let's just add that to test that works. See, we go to Instagram. Oh, why am I not going to? I need to put the actual Twitter web address in. I didn't replace it. Sorry, guys. Get the Twitter address and then place that in our go-to method. Try again. So YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. Okay, I'm getting another error now. So I need to put the await before page evaluate. Sorry, guys. Let's try again. Still getting an error. Let's close that down. What's that doing? Okay, so what is going on here? Let's just try and get that again. Sorry guys, bear with me a second, we'll get there. Put in a text. Oh, okay, saying parent is not a function. So I need to change this to pass in, sorry. Okay, it should hopefully work now. We get data, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and now we get our counts there, all of them. So that's working now. Sorry about that, guys. And then coming underneath this, we're just going to say let subcounts equals a new object. And we're just going to place those three objects, and then we're going to do close the browser using await browser.close. Then we're going to do a response.json, and we're going to send back that subcounts object. Okay, so now if we do get data, you should see that does all the scraping, and then we'll get the counts in our terminal, our console here. So that's working. Awesome. Now, the next step with this is we want to just alter our front end JavaScript. So within our onload function, we're just going to get our YouTube.count, and we're going to set an attribute. We're going to set the attribute of data target, and that's going to equal this YouTube count that we pass back to the front end. Okay, so we just say YouTube.count, data.YouTubeCount. Do the same for the other counts as well. So say IG count, that's going to be data.IG count, and then Twitter count is going to be data.tw count. Okay, and then once that's done, we're going to initialize another function called Animate Counters. Okay, and I got this off of Brad Travis's channel, so highly worth checking that channel out. He's got some great stuff on there, but this is just a nice little method I picked up from him. So we're going to say coming into this animate.counters function, we're going to say counters let speed equal 50. Then we're going to say counters.forEach counter. Then we're going to say counter.inner text equals 0. Okay, to start with. And then we're going to say const target equals, and then we're going to say counter. We'll do a plus sign first. So we'll do counter.getAttribute data target. Okay, which is what we get set in the previous function. We put the plus sign to make it an integer. Then underneath this, we're going to say const update counter equals another function. And in this function, we're going to say let count equal plus counter.inner text. Okay, so we're going to get that inner text and turn it into an integer. Okay, make sure that there's no space there. Underneath this, we're going to say let ink equal, going to say target divided by the speed, which we set at the top of this animate counters function. Underneath this, we're going to say if count is less than this target, then we're going to say counter.innerText equals math.floor, because we don't want any decimal points. We're going to say math.floor count plus increment, okay? And then we're going to say set timeout. We're going to call this update counter function every 20 milliseconds, okay, whilst the count is less than the target. Else, we're just going to say counter.innerText equals the target, okay? And then kind of underneath this, we're just going to call that update counter method. So let's try that now. We should get an animated count after we scrape our data. So that's not working. See if we got our attributes applied, and we don't. Oh, I need to refresh the page, sorry. Let's try that again. What's going on here? Oh, I've got an error in our server now. I don't know what's... Can't read inner text of null. Let's try one more time. Okay, now I'm getting cannot read properly set attribute of null. Why is that happening? Oh, okay, I need to put a... It's got a class. I need to get... Can't read that YouTube counter. YT count. Oh, it's because I've got to put a dot before that. Okay, that's why. As it's a class. Okay, try again. Count a... Oh, sorry, I need to put an R after that counter. I'll just put count a. Okay, right. Hopefully this time it works. And now you can see we get our counter applied. So that's working, brilliant. Okay, now let's do some CSS. So we're going to our CSS, and then we're going to say margin, set our globals, margin 0, padding 0, box size of border box. And then I just want to get a Poppins font as well from Google Fonts. Just get the regular one, embed, copy that into our HTML file in the header section. And then we'll copy this into our CSS. Color, we'll just make it this blue color for now. 6AF5FF. Kind of under our globals, we're going to say body, width of 100%, height of 100 VH. And then we also, I want to apply this gradient. So from this webgradients.com, just getting this stone gradient here. It's quite nice. So if we refresh that, you can see that's looking better. Now come underneath this body section, we're just going to select our eye tags. We're going to give them a font size of 3 rem. And we'll give it a margin of 1 rem. So it should be bigger now. And then coming underneath this, we're going to say dot counter. And here we're going to say position absolute. This is our counter container. Top 50%. We'll do 40% actually. Left 50%. Transform translate minus 50%, minus 50%. And then we'll also do a width of 50% as well. We want to display as flex to make it appear in a row. Justify content, space between, to give them nice even spacing between the elements, and text align center. So now consider nicely centered to the page. And now underneath this, let's just style our button. we'll say position absolute, left 50%, top say 60%, and then we'll do transform translate minus 50%, and then underneath that we'll say width of 5 rem, a height of 2.5 rem, and then we'll say background is transparent, border, we'll say 1px solid, and we'll give it that blue color again, which we created up here. And then kind of underneath this, we'll just say padding of 0.5 rem and a cursor of pointer. Okay, so let's check that out now. That's looking better. And then I just want to add a hover effect to this button to say button hover. And we'll just say opacity of 0.7. That's working. So now if I press the button, you can see we get our Chromium browser appear. It scrapes our data, and then you can see we get our animated counter there now as well. So now I just want to make add a kind of SVG animation for when our data's loading, okay? So there's this website loading.io where you can create an SVG. I've already created one, so I just paste that in here from my downloads folder. And it gives you the SVG output, okay? So if I just go back into my HTML, index.html file, I'm going to add a loader div here. So we'll say div.loader. I'm going to add that SVG image within the div. Actually, I want to put this SVG in our public folder. So // that spinner in the image tag. So now you can see I just need to change the background and the color of the spinner. Okay, so if we go back to the SVG file, I'm going to copy that blue color. I'm going to replace all of the bars with this blue color. Okay, because this is one I created previously. And I just want to set the background of this SVG to transparent as well up here, where you can see background, we'll just say transparent. So now if we go back, refresh the page, that's looking better. So now let's center this. We're going to go back to our style.css. We'll come down to the bottom, we'll say .loader, say position absolute, left, top, sorry, we'll say 10%, left 50%, transform translate, minus 50%, and then we'll also do image, we'll say width 100%. That's looking too big, so we'll make that a bit smaller. I'll just say 100 pixels for now. That's looking better. Now I want to set this at default to display none, because we don't want it to be appearing all the time, only when we click the button, okay? So say display none for now. And then coming into our index.html, within our onload, actually we'll just do our selector, so we'll say const loader equals document.querySelector.loader. And then within our onload function, or request data function, sorry, we'll say loader.style.display equals block to make that appear on the page. Then in our onload function, we're going to say loader.style.display equals none again, because we want it to disappear after the data has been loaded. Now if we refresh, let's make the browser true now so we don't see it. Now if we press get data, you see our spinner appear, and it's still there. So we need to make, what's going on there? Oh, we need to get rid of that E, display equals none, refresh that again. Now you can see our spinner appears, and then we get our animated counter after that. Press it again, and we get the same thing. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. Give me a like, thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.